This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Kathy Worthington. Welcome to our newest episode of Late Boomers. Our very special guest today is Rhonda Britten, life coach and the Emmy-winning creator and host of NBC's reality show Starting Over. In addition to her own show, Rhonda has appeared on Oprah, Steve Harvey, The Today Show, and many more.
And I'm Mary Elkins. She's also the author of 4 best-selling books, including her groundbreaking work, Fearless Living. She's the founder of Fearless Living Institute and is a known expert on overcoming fear. She has a story that shocked me and will shock you about how she surmounted obstacles and conquered fear in her own life. Welcome, Rhonda.
Well, thank you. I love that. And I love how you guys share the intro. That's so cool. I feel hugged.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, please tell our boomers your story and how you came to realize that you could overcome adversity and conquer fear and lead a successful, fearless life.
That's a loaded question. Well, first of all, I believe that any hard day, any horrific day, the most difficult times of our lives have the seed of our destiny in it. So if everyone could just look at their past and just look at the days that were just like, right? I bet you can draw a line from those days to, 10, 20 years later and where you are and how it supported you to unfold. So I didn't know that, of course, when it's happening. We don't know when it's happening to us. So you're talking about when I was 14 years old, my worst day of my life. I was 14 years old and I grew up in a little tiny town in Upper Michigan, the UP. And the town had 2 restaurants, Fancy Douglas House Buffet Hotel and Big Boy. McDonald's was an hour and a half away. We didn't have anything that fancy. And it was Father's Day, and my parents had recently separated. So my father was coming to take us out to Sunday brunch, which was a big deal because 3 kids, 2 adults, that's 5 people. That's a lot of money. Yeah. So I was pretty excited. I was in my mom's room and she's fluffing up her beehive hairdo and putting on her blue eyeshadow and her rose-colored lipstick. And my 2 sisters are in our 1 bathroom fighting it out. And my dad comes in the back door, come on, because that's what dads do. And so me and my mom start walking towards the back door. And as we get there, my father realizes it's starting to rain. So he says he has to get his coat from the car. Now, this coat is a tan Naga hide leisure suit coat. And I think we all remember that leisure suit coats were hot. And my father with his polyester pants and his checkered shirt looked pretty good, right? So my sister, right? He's looking pretty good in that Naga hide. So he opens the trunk to grab the coat. My sister's still in the bathroom fighting it out. And out of the corner of my eye, I notice my father is not grabbing a coat, but he's grabbing a gun. And he starts yelling at my mother, "You made me do this. You made me do this." And he fires. And I start screaming, "Dad, what are you doing? Dad, what are you doing? Stop." And he takes the gun and he points it at me. And I think I'm next. And he blinks, I blink, he blinks, I blink. And then my mother, who already has 1 bullet in her, with her last breath literally says, "No, stop, don't." And my father in that moment, realizing my mother is still alive, takes my bullet, the bullet intended for me, and shoots her a second time. And that second bullet goes through her abdomen, out her back, lands in the car horn. And for the next 20 minutes, all we heard is, and then my father cocked the gun a 3rd time, put the gun to his head and fired. So in a matter of less than 2 minutes.
All in front of you.
Yep. In less than 2 minutes, I was the sole witness of watching my father murder my mother and commit suicide in front of me. Now, I don't know how you guys would respond, but this is how I responded. It has to be my fault because I was the only physically one there that could have stopped it, right? I was the only one with them. And I didn't grab the gun and I didn't kick my father's shins and I didn't jump in front of my mother. So I did nothing heroic. And so I on that day, I basically split into two. It was the outside Rhonda and the inside Rhonda. The outside Rhonda, straight A student still, class president. I'm fine. Sang the solos, did everything. I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine. The inside Rhonda, on the other hand, self-deprecation, self-hatred, guilt, shame, just crawling through glass, basically, because I didn't have a right to be alive. Because by the way, when you watch your mother die and you don't do anything, you don't get to be happy. So that's off the table. And so I went to college. And then by the time I got to college, I went to Minnesota. So nobody knew about my story. And I found alcohol. Oh, well, how lovely. And so I started drinking and eventually became an alcoholic. And then during those years of drinking, I got 3 DUIs and I tried to kill myself 3 times.
Oh.
And that third suicide attempt, I realized something, that I am not very good at killing myself, not very skilled.
It's allowed.
Not skilled. So, by the way, when you try to kill yourself 3 times, they do put you in a psychiatric ward and they do evaluate you. And I was in there for a few days. I was deemed not crazy and they sent me home. Now, I wanted to say one thing, that during all this suiciding and DUIing and drinking, I was also going to therapy, going to workshops, reading books. I mean, I read my first self-help book when I was 12. And when I was 13, I wanted to be a minister. So I was very much actively trying to pursue healing for myself. But as I sat there after my third suicide attempt and I'm home by myself, I'm sitting there thinking, I have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of tools, but I still fundamentally think something's wrong with me. I have to start over. I have to start all over. None of that has helped me. So I think to myself, wait a minute, what do kindergartners do? Well, kindergartners get a calendar and gold stars. So I went to the store, got a calendar, got some gold stars. And by the way, I still have this calendar. And for the next 30 days, I gave myself a gold star for any time I did anything positive.
I love that.
And I'm talking about drinking and not getting drunk or getting angry and not breaking anything.
We can all do that at any age.
Oh, absolutely. And so after 30 days and I had a calendar filled with gold stars, that gave me hope. And it also made me realize maybe there was a reason I was alive. Maybe there was a reason that I didn't die. And that became my quest to figure out why I was here.
And fear and being fearless is definitely one of them. But you were actually, rather than feeling guilty and like you were to blame for your mother and father's death, you were afraid, weren't you?
Yes, but I had no relationship to fear. So the thing is that I think a lot of people don't have a relationship with fear. I don't think I'm alone. I mean, even if when I was drinking and trying to kill myself and going to DUIs, if you would have asked me if I was scared, I would have said no.
Even when that gun was pointed at you, you weren't scared? I'm shaking right now hearing your story.
Well, you have to remember, it happened so fast. I didn't feel anything, right? Like it happened too fast.
You can't think.
But afterwards, I mean, even when we lived by ourselves, me and my sisters, we, like nobody came to care for us. Nobody came and fed us. We took care of ourselves. And if you would have asked me if I was afraid or scared, I would have said no, because 1, I'm from Upper Michigan. We don't feel. 2, I'm 100% Finnish. We don't feel. 3, we never talked about feelings. And 4, I think most people don't have a relationship to fear. So I didn't know I was afraid until I started moving through my next healing journey, which then I started having a relationship with fear. And it blew my mind that I had been living in fear for almost 20 years and didn't even know I had fear. And again, I don't think I'm alone. I think most people are like me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what do you say to people who you work with who live in fear? I mean, and I have to ask you too, do you still have fears?
Well, fears never go away. I shouldn't say that. Fear is always with us because it's part of our neurobiology. So there's no getting rid of fear. But there is transforming fear.
Fight or flight.
So, yeah, fight or flight. But that's a generic version. We want to actually get it personalized. So, I mean, I don't think we walk around going, I'm in fight or flight, right? Instead we say, what's wrong with me? Why am I doing this, right? And then we blame ourselves. And if you don't mind, I'll give you all a little quiz. I'll give everybody listening a little quiz.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Like a little.
Go ahead.
You like a little quiz? Okay, so one of the things that I have to transcend when I speak or teach or, coach is actually having people recognize that they do have fear and how much of fear they have. So I have a little quiz that I give people. And if you can shut your eyes, if you're safe, if you're driving, don't do it, right? If you're safe, shut your eyes. And
yes,
then,
we're safe here.
yeah, safe here. You can
We
shut
could
your
do
eyes
it.
and then nod your head if you do any of these things or feel any of these things.
I'm nodding already.
Okay. You're a good student. Good job. Okay. So here goes. So if you're listening, go ahead and get those eyes closed if you're able and nod your head. Do you ever deny yourself? Do you ever isolate? Do you ever pretend everything's okay when it's not? Do you ever hide out? Do you ever secretly whine? Do you compare? Do you manipulate? Do you get defensive? Do you judge? Do you complain? How about procrastinate? What about worry, struggle, wait and call it patience? Do you find yourself blaming, deflecting? What about trying to be in control? Do you ever feel bitter? Do you ever feel powerless? What about dissatisfied, resentful, entitled? Do you ever feel guilty, disappointed? Do you find yourself being a perfectionist or a people pleaser? Indifferent? Do you feel irritated like you might now with your head nodding so much? Overwhelmed, right? Do
You
you
go
feel
too fast.
overwhelmed, right? Do you feel overwhelmed? How about ignored, getting caught in self-pity, annoyed, or caught in victimization?
All of the above. I mean,
All of the above. Okay, so Mary, you are a good student, like I said. So when I speak to 1,000 people or 100 people, 95% have over 95%. And I dare say most, if they're brave, will say 100%. And there'll be once in a while a random person that goes, I have 20%. And I look at it, I go, liar, liar, pants on fire, right? Like, liar, liar. Because not admitting you do these things actually stops you from growing. You want to admit that you do these things. And so Mary and Mary, I want to say that one of the things that we do, one of the first things we can do is actually start, instead of seeing these as problems, right? Like these are character defects. Oh, what's wrong with me? I'm judging. Oh, what's wrong with me? I'm procrastinating. Oh God, I'm people pleasing. I got to stop doing that. Right. And we beat ourselves up and put ourselves down. Instead, if we simply call them fear responses, because you wouldn't procrastinate if you didn't have fear. You wouldn't feel guilty if you didn't have fear. You wouldn't get anxious if you didn't have fear. You wouldn't complain if you didn't have fear. So get caught up in the, changing the chairs on the Titanic, right? And focused on what we call character defects and problems, right? So we're looking at our we call them character defects or problems, but really they're just fear responses. And so once we can see that, we can change it.
I love that. I am shaking my head to everything and thinking, oh my God, because when I do feel those feelings, I think you shouldn't feel that way.
Right. And of course you quote unquote should, in the sense of if fear is on patrol. And so basically those fear responses are an alert, and they're telling you a few different things. One, they're telling you that you're moving into the unknown. And this is, you may or may not know it either, because it might be something that's just brewing inside of you, and your energy field is already like reaching beyond and starting to go out in the world, and you can feel that energy spike. You may not even necessarily feel it if you're not HSP, a highly sensitive person, or you're having different thoughts, like if you haven't dated in 20 years and you're thinking about it, that activates your fear. So whenever you go into the unknown, whenever you're going to take what I call a stretch, risk, or die, your wheel of fear, what I call the wheel of fear, is going to be activated. So the good news is whenever you do find yourself complaining, or whenever you do find yourself judging, if you can stay awake and aware and say to yourself, not beat yourself up for it, instead go, oh, wait, my wheel of fear has been activated. Wait a minute, that's a fear response.
Well, can you please explain about fear of risk? How does one take more risks and make better decisions and live more fearlessly in their business and in their lives?
I love that question. I love that question. So it's one of the reasons why I created the Wheel of Fear. So the Wheel of Fear, the Wheel of Fear. So the Wheel of Fear is what stops you from taking risk. Okay. So the Wheel of Fear has you, and it has tricked you into believing that risk is dangerous. And it might make it, like a crazy idea, or maybe a friend doesn't think you should do it, or maybe it's like you have to learn something new, or again, whatever it is, there's something about it that is like what I said, a stretch, risk, or die. So the Wheel of Fear does not want you to take stretch, risk, or dies. So the Wheel of Fear doesn't care about your happiness, and it could care less if you take a stretch, risk, or die. Fear's only job is to keep you the same and safe, same, and stuck. because the only way it can keep you alive, it thinks, is by keeping you the way you are now. So all it will lead you to is looking in the past for a solution. That's all it will do. It'll go over there. Remember go in the past. And that's why we drudge up our past, because fear goes, well, I've kept her alive this long. I'm pretty amazing. So she just has to do more of that. Right. And even though we're like, no, I don't want to do that. But fear's going, no, it's a really good idea. Do that.
Oh, geez.
So fear is like an actual character that we can.
It is.
We can name it with a capital F, huh?
Yeah.
Well, fear loves you. Fear loves you. And it just wants to keep you safe because it still thinks you're 6 years old.
Well, I am squirming in my seat here, and you'll see it on YouTube, because I'm basically going through all that right now in my own life. And what do you tell people who are afraid to take risks? Because maybe they'll say, like you said, I don't feel I'm good enough, or I'm afraid something will hurt me, or I don't know, I could go on. What do you tell those people?
But those are all the imaginations.
And if they're afraid to make a bad decision.
Right. But that's an illusion. Those are all illusions. Those are all things made up from the past. They have nothing to do with reality. So, but we don't see that because it feels real, right? So that's the thing. It feels real because we have a memory of it from the past. And so it feels real. And then other people are telling us things, or we're listening to things, or we're hearing things. And that also contributes to the feeling of like, well, yes, I'm smart for not doing that. But then, of course, your soul is tapping you on the shoulder and go, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. And you're like, no, I got to wait for a minute. I got to just wait. Right. So bottom line is we have to start having a conversation with our lovely wheel of fear. And so everybody has what I call a core fear. And so when you say to me, oh, got to take a risk. Oh, I don't know if I should take the risk. I don't want to make a bad decision. Well, even your idea of not wanting to make a bad decision is compromising your soul calling, because even worrying about making a bad decision is putting you into a level of attachment to having to be right. And so one of the things that I teach my clients is you have to be willing to be wrong. Are you willing to be wrong about everything to find the right life for you? Are you willing to be wrong about everything to find the right life for you? And what you're not willing to be wrong about is where you're attached and where fear has you. So are you willing to be wrong? Are you willing to be like, well, okay, I make a bad decision. Who cares? I'm going to make the best decision I can right now. And again, once you understand what your core fear is, you'll be able to see, oh, that's why I don't want to do it. So for instance, I'll tell you my core fear. My core fear is loser. Okay. I don't want to be seen as a loser, thought of as a loser, right? So let's say I've got to make a decision. If my fear's in charge, I'm probably going to not make a bold decision, because what if I fail? What if I lose? What if something bad happens? So my wheel of fear is going, well, you better not do that, because then everyone's going to know you're a big old loser. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I better not do that, right? But we have the lovely wheel of freedom over here, that we can move from the wheel of fear to the wheel of freedom. Wow. And we can instead access what I call your essential nature. And my essential nature is authentic. So I must make my decisions based on my essential nature, not on my core fear.
So there's a wheel of fear and a wheel of
freedom.
That's pretty amazing. How did you come up with that?
Oh, God told me it. I am not smart enough. I'm not smart enough for that.
I mean,
I was working with clients for, many years, and then it just started forming, like one client, I formed part of it, and then a bunch of other clients, and then I formed another part of it. And then eventually, I hit a tipping point and I got it. And again, it was that's gotta be a miracle. It's gotta be God helping me see that. But then once I saw it, it was like a door unlocked. It was like the wind. I could feel the breeze for the first time. It was like I could breathe for the first time, because all those years I was wondering, consciously and unconsciously, what's wrong with me? In the middle of the night, life's not working for me. I'm in the middle of the night going, what's wrong with me? And then when this uncovered, when I discovered it, when it was downloaded and I listened, it was literally like, it changed everything. It changed my entire perception of myself in the world. And as neuroscience says, the only way to change your life is to change your perception.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So that's what you call your wheels technology?
Yes, that's right. So each wheel has 4 components.
Are there more than 2 wheels?
Nope, there's only 2.
So
Wheel of Fear, Wheel of Freedom.
tell us the components.
Ooh, okay. Let me get my book out, and I'll show you a picture for those people that are on video that can look. So the Wheel of Fear has 4 components. I probably should mark these pages, but oh well. Okay. So here we are. We've got 4 components. Number one is called the trigger. Now the trigger is what I call your core fear. Okay. When you are triggered, right? When you are triggered, you then move into fear responses. Now, fear responses are all the things I read out loud already. And, we all know our fear responses. We all know what we hate about ourselves, or what we're disappointed in ourselves, or why we beat ourselves up, right? So all those things that you think are wrong with you, character flaws, problems, those are fear responses, okay? So then you start doing your fear responses to try to, fear tells you to protect yourself, and you're going to do these fear responses to protect yourself. But you and I both know, let's imagine that we people please for the 10th time, the 15th time, the 100th time. How disgusted do we get with ourselves? And how are we we're so disappointed. We're so frustrated with ourselves. And so it drops us into what I call the core negative feeling. And you know your core negative feeling, and I know my core negative feeling. Everybody, when I help guide them, they pretty much know their core negative feeling, because that is what you felt many a day. And when you feel that core negative feeling, it drops you into what I call self-destructive behaviors. And again, we all know how we personally self-destruct, right? And then those self-destructive behaviors convince you even more that you better get better at hiding, right? So it is a wheel. That's why we feel like we're on a hamster on a wheel, because it goes around and around and around until you can get off anywhere. You can get off before a fear response, during a fear response, after a fear response. You can get off while you're having that feeling, before it, after it, or in self-destructive. So you can get off it anytime you become aware that you're on your wheel of fear. And then you move over to what I call the wheel of freedom. So the core fear is that thing you do not want anyone to think about you, smell about you, say about you. You don't want anyone to ever have this around you. You don't even want it to have the scent of it around you. And by the way, you don't know what it is, because it was created by the time you were 7. And so it hid really well, because it does not want to be found, because if it's found, it can't protect you.
Wow.
So God gave me the exercise.
And talk about the Wheel of Freedom a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, I would be happy to. So the Wheel of Freedom also has 4 components. And you're going to see, if you're from the Midwest, or you have parents that taught you how to use a screwdriver and said righty tighty, lefty loosey.
Oh yeah.
You're going to see right. So the Wheel of Fear is righty tighty, because as you're on the wheel, you get tighter, and you're going to see that the Wheel of Freedom is lefty loosey. So the first place you go on your Wheel of Freedom is what I call your essential nature. Okay. Now your essential nature is that part of you that you hid a long time ago because it was not safe to have. For whatever reason, our Wheel of Fear was created, like I said, by the time we're 7. Yes, it's about environment. Yes, it's about culture. Yes, it's about who you hang out with. But it's also been proven now that fears are handed down through our DNA. So you might have, right, your Wheel of Fear might be from your great-great-great-grandfather. You might not even know, quote unquote, why this is your wheel. Okay. But I will tell you that when you get it, you'll be like, oh, right. You're like, oh, I can't believe that. No. Right. You'll be like, no, that can't be it. You'll push back on me, and I'll be like, yes, it is. And they'll be like, oh, I see it now. Oh, right. So then the wheel of Freedom. So in response to the Wheel of Fear, you hid a little part of yourself away, because that little part of you is precious, and you realize you cannot expose it to the world. And that is your essential nature. And that is the piece of you that you have. So you have when life is working. So everybody probably has areas of their life, they're naturally on their Wheel of Freedom, right? So maybe in your intimate relationships, you're naturally on your Wheel of Freedom. You have your essential nature. Life is good. So the Wheel of Fear, like I said, only comes up if you're taking stretch, risk, and dies. And it's probably the areas where you're having the most difficulty, the most challenges, the most insecurities, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So the Wheel of Freedom, you already know how it feels because you have been on it before. You just haven't been able to proactively get on it, right? So my essential nature, what I hid unconsciously many years ago, is authenticity.
What does that mean
12,
for you?
Well, being true to myself. But first of all, I had to find out who the heck I was. I didn't even know who I was. And by the way, on my Wheel of Fear says, well, you better not be authentic, Rhonda, because they're going to know you're a loser. Because if you're authentic, they're going to know you're a loser. We got it hidden right now, lady. So when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I would write E.E. Cummings' quote, and I'm going to butcher it, which is, the hardest fight you'll ever fight is to be yourself in this world, right? And I used to write authentic quotes all the time. Right? I'd write them down in my journals and diaries. But I couldn't be that because I knew you wouldn't like me. You wouldn't accept me. You wouldn't, when there was fear up, right? So I hid, right? I hid myself. So when I am on my Wheel of Fear, one of the first things I do is I ask myself, well, what would you do if you were being authentic? What would your decision be if you were being authentic? What would you be dying to do if you were authentic? What would you say? What would you do? What would you, right? So what does authentic feel like? And in the beginning, I didn't know. I had been hiding for so long. I had no idea who I was. And I had to find that out. And for months after I realized this, I walked around the house going, do I like this? Do I like mason jars? Do I like rose tea? I don't know. Do I like rose tea? Wait a minute. Do I like iPhones? I don't know. Do I like this pen? Right? Because my favorite color was green because my kindergarten boyfriend's color was green. And when I was married, my favorite food was Mexican because my husband's was Mexican. And I really believed it was my favorite green and favorite Mexican. But when I started asking myself, I'm like, not so much. Not so much.
That's a riot.
Yeah.
So advise us when we live with someone who has fears. How do you advise us to deal with them?
Well, the first thing
Doesn't
is
everyone have fears? Sorry.
Of course, everybody has fears. But this is the deal. My company's called Fearless Living Institute. So we do FLI, fly, right? Well, FLI also stands for something else. It stands for frequency, length, and intensity. So as you get more facile, moving between the Wheel of Fear and the Wheel of Freedom, the frequency in which you're triggered decreases. The length that it lasts lessens. The intensity minimizes. So yes, your Wheel of Fear may come up, but instead of it being an 8 or a 7 or a 10, it's a 2, it's a 3, because you recognize it faster. You see it sooner. So it doesn't have to build up to an 8 to 10 to get your attention. Instead, it gets your attention at a 2, get your attention at a 3. So you can move much quicker and much more effortlessly without as much quote unquote resistance onto your Wheel of Freedom.
So how do you deal with someone that you live with or you love or a friend who has these fears? What do you say to them?
Yeah. Well, one, everybody has fears, right? So two, it's one of the main reasons people actually don't get fearless. The fear of what their family thinks, the fear of their partner, the fear of their family, their friends, their coworkers. It's one of the main reasons people stop actually moving forward. So this is what I want to say, first of all, is if that is somebody who's listening to us right now and you're afraid to move forward because you're worried about what they might think, if you learn something, you're going to get kicked out of the tribe, so to speak, then I want you to hear this. Then you are deciding that person or those people are running your life. Meaning you'd rather have their adoration and love than your own self-love. You'd rather have them be in charge. So if you want them to be in charge of your life, let them be in charge, but then you can't complain. And you know what? Give them the keys. Let them have it all. And so what we do is we complain, right? Because those people are keeping us down. but we're the ones that gave them the lock and the key. We're the ones that did it by giving them more power over our lives. And then when we do that, we don't actually have sovereignty. We don't have agency, right? We don't have personal power.
I get it.
Right? So when we have these people that we love that have fears, and again, they all will, everybody does. The first thing is, one, the more you know your wheel of fear, the more you'll see their wheel of fear. And so you'll know what's up for them. And so you'll have a lot more compassion, a lot more empathy, and you'll be a lot more gentle with them. And you won't be threatened by their, what are you doing? What are you going on? Why are you doing that? Right? You won't be threatened by that. You'll be like, of course they're doing that because I know I was afraid and now they're acting. Of course. Right. So you have
that makes so much sense.
Right? Your heart open. Yeah. You have more compassion. So one of the things that I invite people to do when they begin this journey of fearless living is be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. You're going to open up. You're going to become more aware. And on one hand, it's going to be revolutionary. It's going to be joy filled. It's going to be so freeing, and it's going to feel more meaningful. It's going to have, you feel like you have your power back. And on the other hand, there might be people in your life that are like, who do you think you are, getting too big for your britches? Right.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that they're in fear when they say that.
Yeah. Well, You've said make fears your friends. So give us a few tips on how.
Well, I'm going to suggest one is actually starting to keep track of your fear responses so you can actually start seeing them for what they are and change the label. So instead of saying, beating yourself up, what's wrong with me? You're going to shift it to, oh, that's a fear response. Just taking away beating ourselves up is going to create so much more space and so much more luxuriousness and generosity in our being. It's going to give us more brain space, more heart space to actually have the courage to take bigger risks.
Heart
right?
space, yeah.
Yes, get bigger heart space, right? Because you have more to share about yourself. So that's the first thing. Just being able to shift the label of what's wrong with me to, oh, that's a fear response. So that's first. The second thing is, again, I'm going to say, be gentle with yourself, because this is a opportunity for you to increase your heart space, to increase your soul connection, for you to increase your connection to your intuition, for you to listen to that thing that's bigger than you. So be gentle with yourself, because you're going to be learning things. You're going to be seeing things. You're going to start noticing, oh my God, I do that when I'm afraid. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Oh my God, I can't believe I did that 5 years ago. Oh my God, oh geez, I can't believe, right? But again, it's like, no, that was when you were afraid. That's natural and normal. So what would you do if that same thing happened and you were on your wheel of freedom, right? What would you do instead if you were being authentic in that moment, right? So everybody has a different wheel of fear and wheel of freedom. So, yours might not be anything like mine. So the wheels are personalized and unique so that you have an intimate relationship with it. So you and your fear know each other well, because your wheel of fear is as smart as you are, as educated, as knowledgeable, and spiritual. It knows everything you know, and it uses it all against you. So you have got to keep your wits about you and be awake so that you can see it, again, by acknowledging your fear responses, because those we see those things. So see it, change the label, be gentle with yourself. If you start doing those two things, again, you're going to open your heart, open your mind, open your beingness.
That's great. Is that what your show Starting Over was about? Tell us a little bit about that and how it helped people.
Oh my gosh. So I have done 3 television series, and each one of those, I was changing people's lives. So people would come into the shows, depending on which one was the, different ways that I did it.
Like with a live audience?
No, just I would work with one person. So the show in the UK, the first show I did, I worked with one person in 30 days. And really, I was working with 3 people at a time, but I would change your life in 30 days. So you would come to me and you would tell me your dream, your goal, what you wanted to make happen. And in 30 days, that would be so. Now, on Starting Over, what I did is the same thing. People would have a goal, a dream, something they wanted to happen, and they would all live in a house. So we had 6 women living in a house at any one time. And all 6 women were working on their goals, their dreams, and so I would create a map for them to move out of that. And I would meet with them on a regular basis, putting them through exercises. And one of the things I didn't know that I had this skill for, that I had this gift for, was visceral exercises. So I can create an exercise for anybody to get over anything. It's one of the things I truly can. So if you have a problem that like you can't get over, trust me, I can break it, because I will come up with a unique exercise that will shift your relationship to it without you even fighting against it, right? Because we want to take away that barrier. We want to just make it easy and effortless. So I do visceral exercises with people and I create them. So I do it in VIP days, VIP weekends, and I help you. You tell me what your biggest problem is. We talk about it. I create something, we go do it, and you change.
Is that how your book Fearless Living began?
Fearless Living began because of all the hundreds of people that I did their wheels. And then I was speaking to audiences at the time. I was doing keynotes and speaking and also teaching. And everybody would ask me can you write a book? Because I want to send it to my cousin in Alabama, right? I want to send you a book. Do you have a book yet? Do you have a book yet? And the first thing I did when I first started speaking is I recorded every talk I did on cassette, because that's all we had back then.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing it for 30 years, right? I would bring my cassette recorder to the speaking event, and I'd put on the mic attached to the, cassette recorder, and I'd go over to the cassette recorder, right, and push the buttons down, right? And then I would sell those cassette recorders, Rhonda Britten Live, because I didn't edit them, so they could hear my talk. So people had my voice, and they had some little books that I had made, self-published, and they just wanted a book. And so I eventually got around to figuring out how to do that, because that was a die for me. Everything on my journey has been a die. Becoming a coach was a die. Starting to work with private clients.
Wait, I don't understand what you mean by that. Please explain.
So one of the things, So one of the tools that I have is called Stretch, Risk, or Die. And it's actually the tool that I want to give your listeners today.
Good.
Okay.
Because it's one of my clients and students' very favorite tools. So you basically have a comfort zone, right? We all have a comfort zone. And then around the comfort zone, we have a stretch zone. Around the stretch, we have a risk zone. And outside the risk zone, we have a die zone. And so what happens is when we have a goal, a dream, something we want to make happen, our body, our health, money, whatever it is, anytime you want to move from the comfort zone, which, by the way, in the definition of fearless living is what your life is right now. So whether you're happy, not happy, married, not happy, whatever your life is right now, I'm going to call your comfort zone, okay? Because you know it, even if you're miserable, right? So anytime you want to get into your stretch zone, you have to actually go through the wheel of fear. If you want to get to your risk zone, you got to go through the wheel of fear. Go to the die zone, you got to go through the wheel of fear. So what makes the stretch, risk, and die zone different? It is the level of intensity of emotional fear. So stretches are things you can do, but you just haven't done them, right? Like I know I can walk 10 miles. Have I walked 10 miles lately? No, right? No. So we all have things we know we could do. We could drink more water. We could eat more vegetables. We could take our vitamins. We know we can do this. We just don't do it, right? So that's the stretch zone. The risk zone is, I don't know if I can do it. Maybe, maybe not. It's not a guarantee, right? The stretch is, I know I can do it. Risk is, I could and I couldn't do it. I might be successful. I might fail.
So this is what you teach in the Fearless Living Institute.
This is one tool. I have many tools.
Yeah.
So this is one of my clients' very favorite tools because it's so immediate and you can put it to use right away. So you put your dream or goal up, and with the free course I'd like to give your listeners, fearlessliving.org/risk, RSK, they go put their name and email in. I'm going to give them access to the platform, give them access to the Stretch, Risk, and Die course, so they can actually learn what's stopping them, how fear works with the Stretch, Risk, and Die, and how to switch it so that your comfort zone becomes, takes over your stretch zone, takes over your risk zone. And so what used to be dies are now comfort zone, right? So that's what we want.
Sure.
Yeah. And so inside the course is a workbook. It also has worksheets in there, so you can have templates. So if it's health or business or love or family, you have templates in there. And it's 3 15-minute videos, for gosh sakes, right? Anybody can do it in an hour, right? So, and by the way, the last video, I show you the wheel of fear, so you can actually see the wheel of fear in motion. So go to fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK, and you're going to get access to my Stretchers Can Die course, which is, like I said, one of my clients' very, very favorite exercises.
Everybody
and I have
needs
companies
to do
even
that.
using it.
Everybody needs to do that.
Right?
What would you say to older people who've lost a spouse or grieving the death of a loved one, and they're still hanging on to a past life and they're afraid to move forward? What would you say to them?
Grief is love that has nowhere to go. Grief is just a signal and a sign of love. And grief can last a year, 10 years. I didn't grieve my parents until 10 years after they died because I was just in freeze, right? I didn't grieve them. I just pretended it didn't exist. And it was only after I had a bad breakup that bad breakup was like their death. It brought their death to the surface, right?
Understandable.
That causes grief too.
Yeah. So that bad breakup was devastating, and it brought all my parents' stuff up.
Yeah.
And that's
when we all know these people who are hanging on to the past and grieving, what do we say to them? Do you have some advice for us?
Yes. First of all, you love them, right? And you be gentle with them. And then you can ask them questions like, so for instance, I don't know how long it's been, but I'm going to give a silly example for me. Okay.
Okay.
When I was going through my divorce, I would talk about my divorce ad nauseum all the time. I didn't know I was doing it, by the way. Talk about it ad nauseum. Oh. And about a year and a half after my divorce, one of my friends said to me, so bravely, it was shocking. She said to me, Rhonda, we're tired of listening to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Listening to what? She goes, we're done listening about your divorce. And I was so shocked because again, when you're in your life, you don't even think you're doing that. You don't think you're talking about it ad nauseum, right? You just think you're talking, right?
Unless someone tells you.
Right. And they were brave enough to tell me. Yeah. Now, would I say that to somebody her spouse has died? No. But what I might say is, well, do you want to stay here with us and engage with life? Or how do you want me to support you? What do you need right now? Do you want to go have a cup of tea? Or let's go dancing? Well, I couldn't possibly go dancing. Well, let's just try. Let's just do it.
Dancing's
you love
fun.
dancing. Dancing's fun. Let's go do it. Well, I don't think come on, let's do it. Right. So they've got to feel their spark of life again. And that is moving their body. That's one way to move their body. And then, of course, to invite them into experiencing new things. Take them to a museum, teach them how to do knitting, right? Like, again, something new to spark that curiosity and that aliveness to have them choose to be engaged with life again. Mm-hmm. And of course, just love them the whole gosh darn time.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. Yeah, and what would you like our audience to have as a takeaway today, Rhonda?
Ooh, I want everybody who's listening to my voice right now to just shut their eyes for a second. And I want you to take this in, and I want you to let it wash over your body and soak into your bones. There is nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. There is nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. There is nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. Let that soak into your bones to help make that a reality, because that is the truth. There is nothing wrong with you. It's just fear.
And fear is your friend.
Yeah. It's just giving you information.
Powerful, Rhonda. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our guest today on Late Boomers has been Rhonda Britten, fearless life coach, founder of the Fearless Living Institute, author, television personality. You can reach Rhonda through her website, fearlessliving.org. And as she said, take a free class from her just go on to fearlessliving.org/risk, R-I-S-K. And thank you again, Rhonda.
Yeah. Tune in next week when we'll be meeting another exciting guest. And please subscribe to our Late Boomers podcast on YouTube, and take us along in the car and on walks on your favorite audio platform. Let us know what gets you inspired. We are on Instagram at I am Kathy Worthington and at I am Mary Elkins and at Late Boomers. Please share the Late Boomers podcast info with your friends who may not yet be listening to podcasts. Thanks again, Rhonda.
Yeah. Be fearless.
Be fearless.
Be fearless. Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.